Dear hosts, dear conference participants, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure for me to take part in the Forum Europe Meets Russia, dedicated to the prospects of the development of the relations between the Russian Federation and the European Union. I would like to express my thanks to the Institution for Cultural Diplomacy for the good possibility to inform the young leaders about the outcomes of the recent Russia-EU summit that took place in Rostov-on-Don on the 1st of June this year, as well as of the main directions of the Russia-EU cooperation. I hope that the representatives of the Embassy of the Russian Federation in Berlin will also be invited to join the next conferences in order to hold transparent discussions on different issues of the Russia-EU interaction. Before I start talking about the current state of our relations, let me draw your attention to the formula which is indicated at the agenda of the conference. To my mind, it's not quite correct to say European-Russian relations. I think nobody here denies the fact that Russia is an integral part of Europe. And in this context, it would be right to speak about EU-Russia relations. Now, making an estimate development of the relations between the Russian Federation and the European Union, it's necessary to emphasize that we treat the European Union not only as our closest neighbor, as well as our important political and economic partner. Russia and the EU successfully maintain intensive multi-level political dialogue on a wide range of issues, both bilaterally and within international and regional organizations. Also, we have close economic ties. EU is Russia's main trade partner, which in 2009 had the 50% of Russia's whole trade turnover. Of course, the global financial and economic crisis had a negative influence on our trade with EU and made it fall down. But nevertheless, Russia still holds the first place in the EU's main trade partner, after the US and China. And leads in the list of supplies of natural gas to the EU. We have an impressive investment activity, and I can tell you that the volume of the investments to Russia from the EU amounts to almost 80% of the total Russia's investments volume. As we all know, at the St. Petersburg summit in May 2003, Russia and the EU agreed to reinforce their cooperation by creating in the long term 4 common spaces, and 2 years later adopted the road maps acting as short and medium-term instruments for the implementation of the 4 common spaces. Let me remind you of them. They are common economic space, common space of freedom, security and justice, common space of external security, common space of research and education, including cultural aspects. 4 common spaces still remain the core fields of the EU-Russia interaction. We also hold talks on sectoral dialogues. This format of cooperation is the working instrument for the roadmaps implementation. It creates an opportunity to discuss current issues of Russia-EU interaction and elaborate mechanisms for cooperation within the framework of a common space. Now we have 16 dialogues on different issues, for instance, energy, transport, agriculture, intellectual property, environment. The institutional framework of political dialogues is established by the Russia-EU Partnership and Cooperation Agreement. Ministerial meetings in the format of permanent partnership council on the level of foreign ministers since the entry into force of the Lisbon Treaty. Meetings of the Russian foreign minister with the EU High Representative on Common Foreign Security Policy, Ms. Ashton. At senior officials and expert-level political dialogue is held within regular MFA political directors meetings, monthly meetings between the Russian permanent representative to the EU and to the leadership of the EU Political and Security Committee. Also, expert-level sessions, more than 20 annually, are covering a wide range of topical international and regional issues. The meetings between the Russian and European parliamentarians and the framework of Russia-EU Parliamentary Cooperation Committee are an important constituent part of political dialogue. Rostov-on-Don summit gave substantive impetus to our further cooperation. It was the first meeting in the renovated format after the Lisbon Treaty was signed and entered in force, as you know, on 1st December 2009. The main topic of the discussion in Rostov was the reinforcement of the long-term strategic partnership as part of creating 4 common spaces. But besides those 4 spaces, the leaders of Russia and of the EU launched the practical implementation of the joint Russia-EU initiative called Partnership for Modernization, which was agreed early in Stockholm. Actually, we look back in time, we will realize that it's not that new. It has been enforced on the bilateral level between Russia and Germany. And now we are trying to put in one of the EU bases. The aim of this initiative is to modernize economies and societies, stated of the commitment of Russia and of the EU to join research for answers to the modern challenges of current times, as well as their interest in strengthening their trade and economic partnership. The sectoral dialogues will be a key implementation instrument for the Partnership for Modernization. Russia and the EU have a common interest in enhancing bilateral trade and investment opportunities and in facilitating and liberalizing trade in the global economy, as well as strengthening and developing competition. And that's why among the priorities in cooperation within the Partnership for Modernization, investment, innovation, small and medium-sized businesses development, technical regulations and standards harmonization, intellectual property protection, energy efficiency, judicial system effectiveness, fighting corruption, and strengthening dialogue with civil society. For us, the Partnership for Modernization is not a slogan. It serves a Europe based on broad cooperation without dividing lines, a community of democratic states relying upon rule of law principles and having diversified market economies and a high standard of living. We also see a crucial step forward, the signing of an agreement on the protection of classified information. And that also took place at summit in Rostov. It will encourage closer cooperation in the fields of external security. We already have a successful example of such cooperation on the external security track, for example, in Africa with crisis management in Chad, in the Central African Republic, in the Gulf of Aden, off the coast of Somalia, where with our European partners we are already conducting anti-piracy patrols. Another topical issue at the summit, Russia-EU visa-free dialogue. We need to move towards our main goal, the abolition of visas. The most important thing is not to politicize this issue or doubt bubbles. We must face the truth if the entire EU is ready to deal with this problem. We are ready to cooperate. It's of course easy for us. We are one country. The EU is surely a more difficult political structure. But for the work to proceed more actively, we have handed to our European partners our draft agreement on visas, on the parameters for a visa-free regime, which includes a mutual commitment to provide that regime for citizens of Russia and of the EU. Now it's Brussels' turn to reply. The agreement now awaits actually a political decision. As the Russian leaders said it several times, the Russian Federation is willing to switch to a visa-free region with the EU even tomorrow. In any case, the abolition of visas would cement, to our view, the strategic partnership between Russia and the European Union. But most importantly, and it's not even about the partnership, this would make life easier for millions of people living in the EU and in the Russian Federation. Of course, one of the topics at the summit was energy security and cooperation in the energy sector. Russia and the EU are actively working to diversify oil and gas shipment routes. You know that big joint projects such as the Nord Stream are being successfully implemented. The Russian side very much hopes that the South Stream project will also receive the status of Trans-European Energy Network. Together, we are working on security mechanisms in order to protect the legal rights of oil exporting countries, transit countries, and importing countries. Now, one should suffer, but we should all enjoy the same level of protection. In this context, we think that we need to put in place a new regulatory framework or to improve the existing international regulatory framework to serve energy cooperation. One of the controversial points of the Russia-EU cooperation remains security. We have to admit that discussions on this topic in Rostov revealed an overall dissatisfaction for a variety of reasons with the current European security architecture. There is a growing understanding, notably at a higher level, that existing security system is inadequate and its decision-making mechanisms need reconsideration. There is a set of organizations aimed at dealing with current security challenges in the Euro-Atlantic space. But the point is that we neither have common strategy nor unified international legal standards to respond to these challenges. And that's why in June 2008, Russian President Dmitry Medvedev put forward the initiative to develop a new pan-European security treaty, the main idea of which is to create, in the context of military and political security in the Euro-Atlantic region, to create a common, invited space in order to finally do away with the Cold War legacy. In view of this, Russia suggested to formalize in the international law the principle of indivisible security as a legal obligation pursuant to which no nation or international organization operating in the Euro-Atlantic region is entitled to strengthen its own security at the cost of other nations or organizations. We do not intend to alter the status of NATO or OSCE, Collective Security Treaty Organization, or the Commonwealth of Independent States. We simply say, let's do what the presidents and prime ministers spoke about. Let's make a legally binding document. The answer which we expect to receive will show whether our partners were sincere then in the 1990s, or those were merely exhortations so that the Russia of those years would feel respected. Speaking at the 66th International Security Conference in Munich in February this year, the EU High Representative Catherine Ashton has confirmed that the EU is open to discuss ideas laid down in the draft treaty. We have also noted her correct assessment concerning the lack of legitimacy and effectiveness of current pan-European security structures. Legitimacy is the main point of the draft treaty, under which the parties should assume an obligation not to enhance one's own security at the expense of the security of others, and to formalize an implementation mechanism for the principle of indivisibility of security. We are quite often asked why not to solve this task in the framework of the existing structures. The answer is very simple. The European Union, NATO, and the Collective Security Treaty Organization, all these structures represent organizations that ensure security only for its members. The idea of the treaty is to create a common security framework for all states with no exception. It's not our intention to impose ready-made answers upon the partners. The draft treaty sent in November 2009 to the heads of states and governments of all countries in the Euro-Atlantic area, as well as to the leaders of the organizations dealing with security issues in the Euro-Atlantic space, is first of all an invitation to hold a subject dialogue, to analyze the reasons of functional failures of the present system. In other words, we are open to proposals on specific provisions of the draft treaty. I'd like to note that originally the European Security Treaty was developed as a comprehensive document covering all major aspects of hard security. However, given the outcome of international discussions and partners' feedback, the draft treaty focused now on the main strategic issue. I will repeat it: the principle of indivisibility of security, preventing any state or organization from strengthening their security at the expense of others. We often hear from our Western partners that NATO is the main provider of security to the region. Undoubtedly, NATO is an important international organization, but the problem is that NATO centrism in its absolute form or any other centrism will never become a universal security building measure. Besides that, we are all realists and understand that a number of countries of our region will in any case remain outside NATO. And they will ask themselves how they can exercise their unalienable right to equal security. The question is crucial: is the fundamental principle of indivisibility of security still supported and shared by the Euro-Atlantic community? If the answer yes, that is we hope, then what prevents us from reaffirming already undertaken political commitments in a legally binding form? We are not going to step up this process artificially. Political will should gain its critical mass. But the process should be inclusive and engage all international actors, states and organizations. Hence, a logical question: what's the best format for discussions and negotiations on the European Security Treaty? Format approach advocates OSCE as a guardian of basic philosophy and commitments regarding interstate relations in the Euro-Atlantic area. Besides, its membership covers the whole region. The OSCE is a universal organization, and nobody calls this into question. But actually, OSCE, in its current position, is not able to solve such a relevant issue. But reasons are obvious: self-interest of particular states or group of states towards the organization, use of its resources in solving only national or bloc problems, Finally, the OSCE doesn't have a legal capacity, and that's why its potential is quite limited. Given all these circumstances, it would be rather reckless. Rather reckless to give the OSCE complete control over the European Security Treaty. We believe that we need to involve in our dialogue on the draft treaty all multilateral negotiations formats existing in our regional. Ideally, the treaty should be discussed on an independent platform with participation of states and international organizations, the EU, NATO, OSCE, and etc. Moreover, I would like to emphasize that the draft treaty has its own importance with regards to the COFO process being developed in the OSCE's framework and aimed at increasing organization's effectiveness. The COFO process appeared as a response to Russian initiative on the European Security Treaty, and these two processes are interconnected but not replacing each other. We also assume that the Russian proposal may be used as a basis to develop systematic and constructive dialogue on a wide spectrum of security issues, arms control and confidence building measures, cooperation between all organizations and actors in the Euro-Atlantic security space, elaboration of common approaches to conflict settlement as well as to counter global security challenges. Here we can see a common ground for our cooperation with the European Union and promising spheres for joint efforts. Today, certainly, it's too early to predetermine the final content of the future European Security Treaty. The most important at current stage is result-oriented negotiation process where the parties should find common language and agree upon most sensitive issues. That's absolutely essential to improve the atmosphere and to enhance confidence in the region. The participants of the Russia-EU summit also discussed a new basic agreement. As you all know, the political agreement is have to replace the existing partnership cooperation agreement that was taken at Russia-EU summit in London in October 2005. Both Russia and the EU have experienced significant political, economic, and social changes since the signing of the PSCE in 1994 and its entry into force in 1997. The new basic agreement should reflect these changes and to make a qualitative step forward to create an enhanced legal basis for Russia-EU relations, record joint adherence to basic principles of interstate relations, and take Russia-EU interaction to a new higher level of strategic partnership. Russia and the EU started negotiations on the new agreement in July 2008. These days in Brussels, the 11th negotiation round will be organized. Immediately after the summit in Rostov, a Russian-German summit followed. I'd like to draw your attention to some important arrangements. In Meseberg, Dmitry Medvedev and Angela Merkel adopted statement containing the initiative to establish a committee on foreign policy and security between Russia and the EU, which, among other things, would develop joint activities in the field of crisis management. Chancellor Merkel, Frau Merkel, promised to pass this initiative onto Brussels and help to ensure that it was endorsed by the European Union. The initiative voiced in Meseberg goes in this direction. The committee is conceived by the initiators should be empowered to take practical decisions in the area of crisis management, for instance, peacekeeping. How it's going to work in practice, we will see in future. We should wait for the reaction of the EU members. Thought should also be given to how to build the work of this committee and what powers to provide it with. But anyway, this is a step in that direction, which seems correct to us. In conclusion, I'd like to note that we are sure there are not insuperable obstacles in the path of the EU. Of course, Russia-EU interaction. Our cooperation needs one only thing: political will. And we believe that the next summit to be held in Brussels this December will give impetus to the implementations of Rostov's arrangements. Thank you very much for your attention. And I'm ready to answer your questions.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kurov.
Большое спасибо for your presentation. I would like to pick up one point that you said, we must face the truth. I think much of Europe was very impressed that after the tragic plane crash near Katyn, there was this sort of glasnost, new thinking in Russia. And I think when it comes to Stalin, the picture is a little more mixed. I'm probably rather ignorant there, but if I remember correctly, there was even a Soviet president at the time who sort of started criticizing Stalin. On the other hand, if I'm not mistaken, there was a sort of popular vote about the great Russians of the past century, and Stalin, I think, made it quite far. Could you envisage that there could be a change in thinking, or even something like a truth commission to find out how great a Russian he was, or a Soviet, or whether there could have been one or the other problem as well? Thank you.
Thank you very much for your question. So I think that the world is changing, yeah, and of course Russia is also changing. And as you mentioned, the process of glasnost in the Soviet period gave big impetus to the changes in our country. We know from our history that the West tried to use this opportunity to take the negotiations with Russia on a high level, and I think that we maintain this process, this tradition, and of course we are striving for more cooperation with the EU, and it's a pleasure for me to state that we are experiencing this time good relations with German government, and I can tell you sincerely that in this context, negotiations were held in Meseberg. Yeah, Russia is changing, the world is changing, and I think that these changes should be considered by our partners in Europe, and the desire of European countries to discuss controversial to discuss controversial issues on the topics that I already mentioned. Is shows this desire shows that we have a good opportunity to develop this cooperation. So I think that we have good prospects. Of course, there are a lot of controversial issues, but we can solve these problems, and we see. I repeat, we see the desire from the European side to discuss closely these problems, and to try to find a convenient answer to the Russia-EU agenda.
Hello, I'm Dominika. I come from Austria, and I have two questions for you. The first one, maybe let's start with security. We're speaking here within a conference on peace building and reconciliation, and you mentioned security, the European Security Treaty, and so on. But don't you think that security should also start within our neighborhood? And already here I see two different terms used by the European Union. It's more the common neighborhood. Russia says it's areas adjacent to both Russia and the European Union. So here I see already two different approaches. And also Medvedev, who once said that there are zones of a privileged interest for Russia. And I would really love to see also both sides cooperate, but I think that sometimes they behave more like competitors, and it starts with frozen conflicts. Why don't both sides first try to solve them? Because I see that without Russia it's just not possible. I'm talking here about Nagorno-Karabakh, about Transnistria, and it's such a shame because I don't think that we can speak about security without first trying to solve and show people that we can cooperate in solving conflicts that are just 2 steps far from us. And the second question is, why, in your opinion, is it so hard to conclude a new PCA? It expired in 2007. We are here in 2010 and speaking about modernization and common spaces and I don't know what, which are all nice and catchy words. And also a visa-free regime. I would love to do that. I love Russia, I love traveling there, and every time I'm so annoyed with all this process, and my friends in Russia as well. But how come that we're speaking about visa-free regime and at the same time we're not capable of concluding a new concrete agreement? Thank you.
Thank you. As for the first question, it's difficult not to agree with you, with your statement that the issue of European Security Treaty that's put forward by the Russian side is a controversial issue, I have to admit that we are diplomats here in Berlin and within the European Union have difficulties to explain the profits for European countries from this treaty. I think that the reason is the fear of change of the balance of security. I think that nevertheless the Cold War gone away, but there are European countries, politicians that have fear before Russia, and that's why we cannot find understanding for our suggestion, for our initiative. So we are glad to understand that the European is willing to discuss this draft treaty, and as I have mentioned, that the corporate process was initiated. So it's difficult to say about if whether we have a success on this issue, but we are trying to convince our partners that Europe needs this European security treaty, and this treaty will give the profits for both sides. As for your second question about PCA, there are several reasons why the new PSA was not signed. I will remind you that 2007 Litauen put vote to the negotiations between Brussels and Moscow, and the negotiations was postponed in 1 year. Then 2008 we experienced a crisis in the relations with the EU, and the reason was the war in the Caucasus, and that's why the negotiations failed. Now we see that our European partners maintain their desire to elaborate a new agreement, But we have also some problems on this track because in our view we have different approaches to this agreement. I will give you one example. The European partners want to include in this document the issues of energy security. But from our view, we think that these documents should be concentrated on other issues. For instance, visa-free dialogue, intensification of economic ties, technology, close cooperation in technology sphere, modernization of economy. So we have problems, but we experience now the 11th round of negotiations, which be held this December, and I hope that we can come to the conclusion. Conclusion is that it would be better to cooperate to cooperate each other with new cooperation agreement.
Dr. Kurov, I'm afraid we've run out of time, but I would like to thank you very, very much for your presentation and for answering the questions from the audience, and I'd ask the audience to join me in thanking Dr. Kurov for his time with us this morning.